the amount of people, and I'm talking about the majority of the world who live to work is unfortunate. But if it is troublesome for you, why not take an extra 2 hours a day to figure out what else you could be doing? If somebody is unhappy and making 250 a year, being miserable, you can make more money being an accountant. But if you're a carpenter at heart because your DNA says so, go with that and try to figure out how to make more than you would have already. I always wanted to make money. I grew up poor. It's always been a must for me. But once I sold OpTic and made the most money I've ever made, I was sad as hell. I hated what was happening. And I then realized that, hey, you might have it all in the bank, but in the end, I'm still here filled with purpose, and that gives me happiness.
Hector, my brother, I've been looking forward to this for years, and I'm so happy to get you on and talk about your amazing story.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Finally.
So Hector, when I first met my beautiful wife, she had come out of a long relationship and she was staying with your family. So thank you so much for that. But she told me right off the bat, just some of your amazing story. And I would love to start with, you worked your way up to be a successful mortgage broker. And then 2009 hit and you had a pregnant wife at home and you had this crazy dream. And now 15 years later, man, you made it happen, which is so cool. I think that would be such a cool place to start because
Sure.
in that, Jen said you celebrate, it's like an anniversary. You celebrate that day when you
August 14th.
Yeah, August 28th, you celebrate. It changed your life for the better.
It did. It did indeed. Just a little bit of a correction. It was the insurance company which I worked at AIG, which was my last job. But I did work in the mortgage industry. I was very successful for the position that I was in. My beautiful wife, Jude, also worked at the same mortgage company and then ultimately at the same AIG office that I worked at, where I spent my entire day daydreaming about this new thing called YouTube and the internet, how it was going to revolutionize and change everything. I'm talking about 2009, really, or at the beginning of 2009, when I was like so entrenched in making YouTube videos, so entrenched in learning about the internet as a whole, not just as its basic use. What else could it be used for? What are the possibilities? How can you think bigger of what's already displayed there? So yeah, but that's where the story of OpTic sort of began.
That's so awesome. You lost your job, you had this dream, and then what was the first step to starting down the route to success?
Well, no, I started making YouTube videos and I know that you have like all these super athletes here on your podcast usually. So, please forgive the gaming side of this thing, the indoor side of this thing. But ultimately what it was is that at that point, I was already sort of giving people tutorials on how to be better at sniping in Call of Duty. And Call of Duty is a very, very famous video game. It's one of the biggest entertainment pieces, or it certainly was number one for the major part of the last decade. I mean, there wasn't a single piece of entertainment, no song, no movie that sold more copies than Call of Duty. A video game that I had fallen in love with after playing it for about 2 years as a decompressor after getting home from work. And back in 2005 when I started playing and all that, like you knew the mortgage industry, right? You knew the subprime lending, you knew everything that was going on. So it was all hustle and bustle all the way up until the bubble burst, all the way until that wall met Mike crashing into it. But up until that point, it was a decompressor. Like I just got home and I played this video game called Call of Duty, and I was 26 at the time, 25 in 2005, 26 obviously, and it just took over my imagination. So that's where it started.
Yeah, because e-gaming is so big now, but back then, was it just, how big was the industry? Was it just starting? Did you see the potential of the growth, or was it just one of those things where you said, let me see how this can go?
So it was funny the way that I came across esports, right? Gaming and making videos on YouTube was like my passion and what was bringing sometimes some cash through the door. And the story of OpTic really begins in 2009, August 14th, 2009, when I was able to leave that work via a firing or a disagreement with my manager. And I remember at the time Jude was 7 months pregnant. We were about to have our kid. Obviously, the stresses that a man feels when he cannot do his duty, his number one duty, sort of, had this pressure on me that allowed me to say, okay, this is some serious stuff. I need, I have my first, and ultimately only have one kid, one great kid, Olivia. But I was in this sort of edge of about to fail her as a father because I wasn't going to be the provider, and we were sort of in this, about to had just burst bubble in the economy with the mortgage crisis, and as we're trying to find our footing, Jude and I, my wife, we sort of had to start getting rid of the luxuries that we had, the BMW, the Mercedes, and we had to go back to the 1993 Honda Civic that my wife has always had, and it was a little bit of an advantage to have that much pressure and have that much conviction in making sure that you don't fail as a father, right? That or as a husband. But luckily for me, she didn't fail me as a wife, and for 2 years, she sort of waited for me to be able to make some money off of this thing that I had already been doing for a couple of years, which is uploading to YouTube. But at the time, YouTube didn't exist the way that YouTube exists today. There was no monetization on the internet for individual creators as you see now, and a lot of the work that you see today, you having your own podcast and so many other people having their own podcast, happened because of those early days and the ability to figure out as a creative community how to make money off of something that sparked not just interest but passion. So yeah,
that's so awesome. You said something so interesting, Hector. You said you had the privilege of having to make it work as a new father. And that's like that old expression, if you want success, you have to burn the boats. There's no turning back. And I think that's so interesting because so many people would see your situation as, as a negative, that you had so much pressure, but you turned it on its head, and you're 100% right. Nothing great in history was achieved with no pressure. So I just think that's so interesting the way you look at things.
Thank you. I didn't know I had it in me. I didn't know that. I didn't know. I was just going through life being, what I was up until that point, which was a corporate ladder junkie and a person that just wanted to be as successful as possible. So he did everything that he could to be the hardest working person in whatever office I was in. And then the internet happened, and some reason, some way, somehow, I made a commitment to not ever give up on something. And that only happened because I quit a bunch of times in the past on everything, right? On my art, on certain careers that I'd chosen. But it wasn't until the internet came about where I said, you know what? If I didn't have it then, I have it now, and let's get to it.
And one thing when people talk about you won a lot of awards, you had so much success. You're an e-gaming legend now, Hector. But people say when you
esports
legend. And when people say what it was that made you different, it was that you really branded yourself well, and you made yourself very accessible to people. Was that natural to you? Because I think branding is something, obviously it's so important, anything to do with YouTube, but I think branding's like, even in my business in real estate, a lot of people might know 8 brokers, but they're going to go to you because of some type of branding. Branding in life is important. Was that natural to you, or
it was a learning process. I think it just came along, and it came along naturally. And I think that the number one thing that did it was, if I'm going to be spending so much time in front of the camera, there's no need for me to sort of reinvent myself and be somebody that I am not. In the internet, and in the amount of people that you sort of cast a net to, allows you to be comfortable with the fact that you are going to have like-minded individuals that are going to sort of gravitate towards the same ideals and same passions that you have. And in this, happenstance of scenario was a video game called Call of Duty, and the marriage of that to content creation on YouTube, which was also brand new.
So how do we go from being really good at Call of Duty to setting up your own kind of OpTic Gaming, the company, and then, because obviously you've branched out into all these other games, right? You just started off with Call of Duty. Was it?
Yeah, so it again, I was I was at home making gameplay videos, tutorials on how to be better at the game. I'm taking a break. I'm feeding Olivia, who happened to be like 1 at the time, or actually maybe not even 1. She had started eating spaghetti. How about that? Like, do the math, right? And the TV was on, and it was on Channel USA. And then I saw a commercial for competitive Halo or a Halo competition, and it was one of those like semi-long 3-minute commercial at the time where they give you a real plug, not just a 30-second in and out. Here's your soap, buy it, right? No, it was this like it's like a 3-minute, 2.5-minute, whatever, that gave you a story of what was about to happen. It was advertisement that MLG, Major League Gaming at the time, had bought on USA, where they sold them a program where competitive gamers competed in a game called Halo, and you follow their story, right? And it sort of, I looked at it and I'm like, my God, I have been doing this entire time. Me competing against other people, it's there. Like the idea that you had or the vision that you had, that's what it is. Fine-tuned and dialed. It's right there. I was along the right path, but it was, Sundance Giovanni and Michael Sepso were the co-founders of MLG. Adam Apicella, like these guys sort of identified what the future was going to be ahead of time. And I was lucky enough to be feeding my daughter at around 12 something that just like sparked my creativity. And I said, that's what it is. Because before being a creative and a creator on YouTube and making the tutorials and all that, we were competing in tournaments in Call of Duty. And I always had this like, man, this is exactly like a pickup game of basketball. This is exactly like going to go play, ball with your friends, but you're doing it digitally in this space. So it was a magical moment for me. And I'm here 20 years later, about to be our 20th anniversary next year. Do you hear the dogs?
Daily.
Okay, cool. So yeah, for me, as you know, Lawrence, we have a family of 8 dogs. So they're out there welcoming their mom or something. But
I'm with you, brother.
Yeah,
I have 3 downstairs, but hopefully I put them away. Hector, a lot of people, like, it's so funny now, just the idea of content creation. So again, I'll take it back to real estate. So many people, I've got a good friend who's a dentist, good looking guy. He's good at what he does, that he needs to grow his practice. And all his friends say to him, you need to be doing videos. You're a good looking guy. And he's like, I want to be a dentist. Like, he's kind of introverted, and he's got this, like, I don't say fear, because he does do them very reluctantly, but now all these different fields, you almost have to become a content creator to grow the business. And a lot of people really struggle with it. Is there any, like, were you naturally just confident in front of the camera? Is there any secrets to getting better? Is it just practice? Like, because when I met you, you've always seemed incredibly confident. You've obviously got a lot of charisma, but I just wonder how much of that is innate and how much of it you kind of developed and grew.
Well, to be fair to any introvert out there, it's like anything else, like going to the gym, like making sure that you don't skip out on the last set. It's just like that. It's an exercise that you have to train your body to do. And it starts with a commitment to say, who cares if one person out of 100 people thinks that I am not as good looking as the other 99 people are saying. I was using good looking because that's what you mentioned about the dentist. But there's this guy named Ben the Dentist who is a content creator / dentist who does incredible work. And although he may be that extrovert, there is an audience that feels a little bit too much like, man, whoa, your energy, dude, like not my type of jam, right? There's something for everyone. And if your dentist friend is a little bit shy and all that, then I suggest that he looks at all of the other, and I mean millions of other introverts that have been able to have an incredible successful career on YouTube. Because at the end of the day, if he was to just and I'm just ideating here, but I've seen how first person things work, and by first person I mean, what is your view of the day looks like, and how much that would be appealing to other people. If he's a good dentist, think about all the dentist students that would like to see an actual procedure going down instead of a dentist sort of reciting case studies or speaking from experience, where you can just put on a GoPro, obviously get permission from the patient to make sure and all that, and then just go in. You can, I bet you if I search it right now, never have, but if I search it on YouTube right now, you can see a first person POV, yeah, same thing. A POV of a dentist removing or doing some sort of procedure. And when you start in moments like that, you don't need to talk. You don't need to have a personality. You have two hands. They have two hands. They know what it's like to, sort of be a spectator in this thing. So for me, it's about trial and error. And my suggestion is that you won't know whether or not you're good at this until you do it. And for what it's worth, finding what works for you on YouTube is better than sort of letting YouTube dictate how it works for you. I think that if you make it about yourself, you become a better creator, and everybody that spectates your content will be benefiting just because of that.
No, that's so true. I love what you said about, I guess the internet's big enough where it doesn't matter what you are, you're going to find your tribe of like-minded people.
Absolutely.
Like you said, the people that are like in your face, that's only going to appeal to a certain amount of people, that the introverts might have, the videos that are more procedural based, like you're saying, that's going to appeal more to them. So I think that's so interesting. It's just finding your niche. And that's one thing with you, Hector, is I feel like you've always been very true to yourself. And that's why it's not like you're trying to do something that's not really you and you're trying to fake it till you make it. You've been authentic from day one. And I mean, that's why all your other businesses, I love the fact you went into fishing, you went into golf apparel, you went into marijuana. It was all things that you were passionate about. And
absolutely
easier. So, because I thought that's a good recipe for success, which is true. And you're proof of that, Hector. But it's also a good recipe for being happy, because you're doing things that you're genuinely passionate about. You're not forcing something just because it's profitable in the end.
Correct. Yeah. Turning your jobbies into a hobby and having that mentality is one of the best things that I did. When I helped co-found the fishing brand that you're talking about, Guggen and Guggen Squad, I basically helped a friend sort of ideate and give him a little bit of the structure that we use at OpTic for him to use in the outdoors world. His name is Rob Turkla, who's part of the founding 5 of the Guggen Squad with Alex Perrick, John B, Lake Fork Guy, One Rod, One Reel, etc. With the golf stuff it was a little bit different, because good golf as it stands is obviously like this insane revolutionary brand in golf, which allowed people who loved golf to be entertained by it in a different manner than what the traditional form of entertainment was in golf, right? What they did was say to everybody out there that, all of the centuries even of culture of golf, and the golf clap, the be quiet, the that sort of thing sort of started to become a little bit too much of a norm, to where anybody who came in, and luckily it was these very talented dudes, to come in and sort of revolutionize the way that they were playing golf, and how okay it was for them to be themselves out on the links. And on both Guggen and golf, and even now with Pine Park, my cannabis brand, I think that, first and foremost, all of the credit goes to those creators. I was lucky enough to be a part of it in the beginning, where I could sort of offer some advice from a person who had already done it. But the hard work, the dedication, the vision, that's all them, man. And I couldn't be prouder of the amount of work that they put in, but the brand that they've created for themselves, that I'm really happy about for them.
Awesome. And Pine Park, you were kind of early. I feel like cannabis has become, you were very early to the game, seeing the potential there, and now it's a lot more widespread. And hopefully, it's going to be, they're going to lift this federal ban soon. Can you talk a little bit about getting into marijuana?
Yeah, I mean, I got into marijuana, I think it was graduation day of high school. I was a straight edge kid all throughout, love sports, playing basketball, all of that. And, drinking and weed wasn't my thing, but, celebration time, graduated high school, middle of football field, you're with your friends. And, that's when I sort of tapped into it. And I'm not here to sort of convince anybody to try it. If it found you, it found you. If it didn't, then, no need for it, right? Unless you feel the need to. But for me, it helped me sort of tap into a focus that I didn't have before. And I will say that because of the illegalities of it in the early, forever, right? But I'm talking in the period from 1997 when I started to call it 2019, 2021 when I launched, and the cannabis brand. A lot of things happened, a lot of history happened, a lot of old politicians out of tune, out of touch, sort of retired and went away, and little by little, it started to become a little bit more of a norm, especially in states like California. And ultimately, what the research that I made and the research that has been done on this thing is that the amount of lobbying against it from not just the pharmaceutical company or tobacco company or the alcohol, liquor world and steel, right? Hemp is very, very strong. You can look at the amount of uses that hemp itself has, and you can compare it against cotton. You can compare it against wood. You can compare it against anything, and its durability, it's a magical plant, right? The medicinal benefits of it, I'm not going to get into, but there are. You do your own research. But for me, it was the ability to sort of tune in to a focus that I didn't have otherwise, right? I struggle with finishing everything, right? If I start a drawing, it takes me months to finish. If if I'm not under pressure, I can't finish something just willy-nilly. So for me, it helped me be able to sit through an entire movie again, after the brain rot of TikTok, after the brain rot of Instagram, just swiping and swiping and swiping nonstop. It allowed me to tune into something different. So finding the medical benefit from it, seeing that the culture was growing, it was more acceptable, finding the business opportunity for us to sort of bring the model of OpTic from a content creation standpoint into the cannabis world to help it sort of make it more accessible, the research, the experiences, it was a match made in heaven for me, truly.
I'm so glad that the zeitgeist around marijuana is changing, because I grew up in England, which is a huge drinking culture with alcohol, but yet marijuana is frowned upon. When you were talking, you brought back this memory of me. When I was in college, I had these 3 roommates, and one of them he'd play, I can't remember what he'd play something, but he would have like 6 hours of drinking. He'd drink like 18 beers, and he'd stumble in, and he was on the second floor, I was on the first floor, and he'd always stumble in my room, like absolutely wasted, and tell me about, his night, and then he would stumble back. Like the harm that's doing to him versus, having a little mild marijuana, it's night and day, but it's just these things get entrenched. And because alcohol's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, it's just accepted that that's normal. And I just saw he was one of the smartest people I knew. And I think the drinking played a large part, but he ended up getting kicked out of college. He ended up having really struggling to find his way in life.
Yeah.
I'm sure that drinking that copious amounts, like 4 or 5 times a week, probably was the cause of it.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm not, again, I have a business, so it would benefit me to try to sell you on it as much as I can. But look at the amount of, look at that. And look, smoking is bad, right? You're putting smoke into your lungs, right? Carcinogens into your lungs. A lot of people smoke blunts, which still has tobacco, and then you're putting that into your lungs. And it's not as bad as cigarettes. It's still, very, very bad, less chemically, sure, but there is a lot of negatives to it. I'm not a big drinker. That's the other thing. I just, socially maybe, right? But having a joint and having the ability to just, again, tap into a focus that I didn't before, where before being around large groups of people who weren't people that I knew personally, or made me feel like the walls were closing in a little bit, or that I wasn't able to sort of explore, or that sort of thing. It allowed me to again be a little bit more comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah, it's so funny, Hector. When I was fighting, a lot of the people I trained with, they would use it to kind of, after the intensity of a hard day training, they would use it to kind of relax. And, the CBD helps with some of the inflammation. I was always so scared that marijuana would make me lose my drive. So I stayed away from it until I was in my late 30s. And I found that there's nothing else that I've experienced in the world that gives me more appreciation for just being alive, the opportunities of life, and just the gratitude for being here than marijuana. It's just incredible. And, a very, very mild dose can change me in the most positive ways. And as far as I know, there's absolutely no benefits. I sleep like a baby, and the next morning I get up and start my day,
Yeah. But again, it does cause those crazy panic attacks that some people sort of shy away from. I like to confront them head on. I sometimes get uncomfortably high, and and sort of sit down and journal a little bit about all of the negative thoughts that I'm having in that moment, whether it's on a business decision or on a way to handle a situation with players. Just an endless amount of just fears that aren't necessarily there, but always in the back of your head. And Joe Rogan and all these people have talked about how hunters back in the Amazon used to smoke a little bit and then go on hunting because of the expanding of the tune of your senses as you're experiencing nature. I sort of felt that, yeah, you know what, like these sort of ideas, negative thoughts are sort of like a cheat code in knowing where the pitfall might be. And what I mean by that is that the more you fear something and the more that you identify what that fear is, the more conscious of it you are, in a positive way in which you can solve that problem because it's there, it's in the future somewhere. And how are you going to react when it inevitably, you face it turning a corner where you didn't expect it? So I think that level of foresight, and I'm not saying that you can see the future, but you can definitely see where you are lacking. For me, my fitness, I eat like a king, I rest like one too, just, piece of shit human sort of vibe sometimes when I relax so much. But again, it's one of those things where you're like, yo, you have to get out there and go on the runs, and you have to get out there and do your sessions. And the outdoors feels pretty good when you're under a little bit of weed, and in my opinion. So it's helped me again in sort of identifying what I can be better at and reacting better when those situations happen.
Hector, you mentioned something about being able to sit through a movie, and I never realized how difficult that is nowadays because we're so used to these instant dopamine hits from, like you said, like YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and all these different things. How do you deal with that as a parent of a teenager? Because that's one of my biggest fears is, obviously, you've made an incredible success out of the internet and out of YouTube. So you don't want to shield we as parents don't want to shield our kids from the internet because there's so many opportunities there, and you're the prime example of that. But at the same time, I just think back to my youth and pre-cell phones. I feel like life was so much simpler and the pace was so much slower. And that example you gave is so right, because I never noticed. Jen and I are the same. We'll watch a movie and we'll be messing around with our phones sometimes, and we've got to consciously say no, like put the phones in the other room, or we're going to actually sit and focus. And it's so difficult. And I'm in my 40s. We're both in our 40s, and the challenges for kids growing up with that kind of the thing that's always pulling the next dopamine rush from the next thing, it does become, but just the ability to concentrate is so much harder. So have you thought about that? Like how we that balance between raising kids in this environment?
Yeah, I think it's one, how much quieter was it, growing up in the 90s, right? I was born in 1980, 45 years old as I sit here today, but everything was so much quiet. I just remember the streets being quiet after a certain time. Even in the city, you found a level of quietness. And what you hear now, this noise that you hear around you, it's coming from here, right? It's coming from here. And it may not be an audible thing, but your conscience is always hearing noise because you're always thinking about what's happening on the internet. What am I missing out on? Oh my God, did my favorite creator upload something? Am I not learning right now from somebody who's done something that I am involved, that I'd like to be involved in? So all of these sort of hooks that the internet has on you, sometimes very beneficial, but the reality of things is that you sometimes are living already, right? And we can get into this conversation too, but you're already living in a digital world. You just haven't made the full transition to putting on this headset and putting on your VR glasses and truly being in it. But we're doing it right now. Make no mistakes about it. Your screen name is a representation of your body in the digital world, right? That's what it is. If technology proves itself to be what it is, everything that you hear about on living in AR, VR, living in all of these things, these are just inevitabilities that we sort of we won't have to, but we would just be sort of indoctrinated into, just because that's going to be the way of the world, but we're doing it already. We're just not doing it at that level of advancement in technology, but we're here. We're doing it right now every single day. You miss it. I checked my phone twice since I started this conversation.
So do you worry about the immersive nature of the future? Technology is going to get so good. So many people would have so much of a better life a virtual life where they don't leave
Yeah.
than a real life, which tends to be harder.
So to answer that question, and the one that I didn't end up answering, is the balance is found in, for me, it's worked. For Jude and I have worked telling our 15-year-old daughter to pay attention to it. If you draw the attention to the fact that, you know, you are watching a movie but you're checking your phone, and you make her realize that, hey, just force a habit, second nature, whatever it is, it has infiltrated you and you're doing this constantly. So for us, it's worked because we tell us, hey, you don't want to let your brain just go on autopilot and pick up the phone just to give itself some dopamine hits, right? Like, you want to be conscious of the fact that you're picking up your phone and that you're gonna do this. Setting a timer works for me sometimes also. But yeah, I mean, the balance is going to be found there. Now, as far as being immersed into this thing, like I said, man, like we are having a conversation. You're in Indiana. I am in Texas. We are not in front of each other yet. We are right here with each other digitally. So it's already here. We're just not wearing all the features, sitting down on a chair, you know, living our lives that way. But it's happening.
That's very true. Yeah, it's kind of wasted energy to be scared about it when we're already living it. It's just going to be a bit more developed. Is that one of the reasons? I know you love taking your annual trips fishing, just being with your buddies and getting out in nature. I think the more I work where in real estate, of course you're seeing properties and things, but so much of it is responding to people digitally. I get so much rejuvenation from being outside in nature, away from screens. Is that one of the reasons you love it?
Absolutely. Like you visiting a construction site, feeling the dirt underneath your feet, smelling the white walls, smelling everything on the outdoors, the banging of that. It feels good to hear something that's not coming from your headset and actually hearing what sound really is, and not digital sounds interpretation of what sound really is. You know, those sort of sound waves have to have, you know, some sort of renaissance in your brain that allows it for it to sort of tune back into the reality of things and not always be as plugged in as you are to that. And when I go on these trips, it's awesome because there's only Wi-Fi by design, I'm sure, but mostly nature. There's only Wi-Fi in the lodge, so you have Wi-Fi while you're there. The second that 6 a.m. hits and you're on the boat until 12, no Wi-Fi, even if you wanted to. There's no Wi-Fi. So you got to wait till lunch. And then from lunch, you have 2 to 2:30. And then you have your moment of Wi-Fi and then back out there. But yeah, that's one of the main reasons. The quietness, the reminder of what this world looked like before the skyscrapers, before we did what we did. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. There's nothing like the outdoors.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Hector, you had this story about your company, OpTic Gaming, when we had dinner in Dallas, and you were telling me about how, I'd love you to kind of recap the story, but it was something about how you sold it for a lot of money and then you weren't happy with the way it was getting run, and then you end up getting it back. Is that correct?
Yeah, and you know that's part of the OpTic story. There was a group that was traditional sports group, owners of a baseball team called the Texas Rangers, that were looking to the future, as everybody does, as everybody should. And they found this sports-like opportunity that was called esports, and there's basically just competitive video games that was happening. As you know, baseball and just traditional sports, the fans are getting older, not younger, because everybody consumes things right here instead of right there. You know, so they had to figure out a way to sort of be ahead of the game and be in a position to capitalize on anything that sports and competition as gaming is. So if somebody was to tell you, hey, you know, there's this thing called football, it's going to end up being called the NFL, but it's essentially this sport, and you can invest into this team for this amount, and, you know, in 50 to 100 years, it might be worth what the Cowboys are worth, right? And you sort of start taking a look at it, and you start doing the research, and everybody's telling you what your analytics look like, how attendance is low, and how interest on media rights isn't as much as it was before. And, you know, it sort of had this dip that ended up taking off with the help of what they learned from the internet kids. But that's what happened. Yeah. So somebody gave me an opportunity to sell majority of my company. by this time I was already, 11, 12 years into it. And I was so not fed up, but I was fed up with being alone and being the only one that was working on this thing. And, it was a lot of money and I couldn't say no. It allowed me to move to Texas, which was something that I already always wanted to do. Illinois is not it's Illinois. So I don't have to explain it to the Illinois, now Indiana. So it was a good thing. It could have worked out. But what happens, and it's happened everywhere, if you study the period of time of YouTube and the businesses that grew on YouTube from a content creator standpoint, call it content to commerce period, you sort of see the same thing where people see audience, they see eyeballs, they see advertising, and they see an opportunity, and they're like, okay, well, all signs point towards the fact that, this esports thing is going to be like traditional sports. The numbers are already there. Stadiums are already selling out just to watch, some dudes, some girls play against each other in very high intense scenarios. And you might not get it because you only watch the UFC, or you might not get it because you only watch traditional sports, and you believe that sweating it out and bumping into somebody is the only way that you can prove competition. Then I show you chess, then I show you poker, and then you sort of start to realize, oh shit, it was the same thing in the end. But yeah, it sort of was a prediction, sort of a bet on this thing, and a lot of people got burnt, but a lot of people were successful in it. The age of the franchising became a thing. Activision sort of saw an opportunity to be the next NFL, the next NBA, and with two of their games, Overwatch and Call of Duty, they created a franchise league in which, for Call of Duty specifically, only 12 teams could be a part of it, and you had to pay a fee of $27.5 million to own the franchise. It was a localized strategy where you would be known as the OpTic, or the Chicago Huntsman, or the OpTic Texas, or whatever. A little bit of backwards thinking, in my opinion. I was very boisterous about it in the beginning. You sort of have this opportunity to, if you're the Cubs, you're the Chicago Cubs, no matter where you go, right? And if somebody likes baseball and for some reason they happen to like your colorway, or they happen to like a player on your team, nobody from Frisco, Texas, or Dallas, Texas, or Houston, Texas is going to wear a Chicago team. Now, if it was just the Cubs, then that's something different. It's appealing to everyone. Everybody is welcome, and that's what the internet was. It knows no borders, knows no mountains. There's no real way to segregate this one thing into one thing because it's so massive. So I think it was a little bit of backwards thinking in that regard. And if we would have done what we all suggested, what the natives of esports suggested, that I think it would have been in a little better place, but it ended up going through with it.
So when you sold the majority stake, part of the deal was you moved to Dallas, and you were there to help with the transition. Is that right?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I wanted to stop doing everything that had to do with corporate. I wanted to stop everything that had to do with business, and I wanted to go back to the reason why I started all this, which was to be a creative in the digital media world. And unfortunately, what I didn't realize back then is that you can't truly rely on the fact that everything is going to go according to plan. So to keep some guards up when it comes to control, to keep some guards up when it comes to maintaining the vision. And, at that point I sold majority. So whether it crashed or didn't, it would have had no monetary impact on me. Right. But something in here was like, this isn't right. Your soul's not going to be right. You're going to beat yourself up over it constantly. And I sort of set out on a journey to buy it back. 2 years after I sold it, I had the opportunity to buy it back, and I did. And then I sort of got into this weird position in which I was sort of I was put in a position to have to give up majority again in order to be able to compete in the things that I was competing in. So it's been a journey. You bought it back, you have investors, it's a traditional business on something that is led by passion, and those two things sometimes don't see eye to eye. And the money people who have made a lot of money think that their strategy is the better way to do it. And then you have the endemics who have actually done it in this very particular space that say maybe we should just keep doing the same thing that we were doing without having too much traditional sport DNA be injected into this new sports DNA.
So Hector, how much was that? Like when you sold the majority stake, could you have just financially? This sounds like it was a lot. It was more of an emotional decision with your baby. It was the first company, the big company you started. It was a lot more than just about the money. It was your baby, and I think it takes us making a certain amount of money to realize that money's not everything. Is that kind of what you realized as well?
In the end, yes. And it was a good thing. I mean, obviously it's a bad thing, sad thing that it happened, but at the same time, I'm not the type to sit there and pout about the what life throws at me, but instead, what do I do to dodge? What do I do to move, maneuver, or otherwise get over? And I identified what I was most passionate about when I saw what they were doing to my baby, in a sense. And it was in that moment that I said, you know what, this is what I want to do. I disagree with it wholly, and I'm not going to stand by it and watch it happen. So I said, if you're going to make the commitment to work on this for the rest of your life, then get to it. And I got to it.
Awesome. I love that. One thing I know you touched on earlier, and you've talked to me about it, but just managing the ego of the players, like it's and there's a lot there, right? When you're running a team and you've got all the individual players, and I know there's been some stories of people that you've basically helped them build themselves and branded themselves and become successful, and they've kind of turned around and stabbed you in the back. How has that been? Just that journey of it reminds me of someone who's really good at their business, and then they grow to an extent where instead of doing the thing they're really good at, they end up managing people. Because when you company, you become, you're managing the people under you, and that's not really, you were an incredible gamer and you were doing these tutorials on gaming, and then you end up, as you grow in your career, suddenly you're managing all these people and these egos, and you seem like a very, I'm sure loyalty is important to you. You have good family values, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't really share that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, I think it's managing not just their ego, but my own ego, and what I believe that this company should be, and what I believe that they should be as players. And managing their egos is just something that you have that I sort of became a natural at it because I had always been an older brother, right? I'm the oldest of four. I've always had a younger brother, Pedro, right? My brother, one of the main reasons why we're all here. And when I started to deal with people that were his age, it was easy because I'd already been an older brother, and I already knew what sort of influence and what sort of guidance I needed to give in order for them to be themselves in a way that it would make them successful. So from the beginning, it wasn't necessarily just managing theirs, but it was managing my ego and how we can all work together in this very complex, competitive world where no matter how you put it, you can look at UFC and see the greatest athletes of the world go at it. And then you can go to soccer and see the same thing in a different sort of competition. The competition and the testosterone doesn't change no matter if you're a nerdy video game player or a super buff and fit video game player. It just doesn't stop. So that sort of dynamic is something that you have to temper and that you have to maneuver around. But boys are going to be competitive, and they're going to do what competitive dudes do. And I was lucky enough to be able to make them see and understand why, doing it against each other or competing against each other when you're on the same team is not always healthy. There's just the elements of advantages in it, but it's not always healthy. So yeah.
I think that's the thing with team sport, Hector, is you have so many. The real elite, they're all, they have the alpha male personalities, the winner personalities, and and having them so in an individual sport to be easier. But when you're doing team sports like that, like you said, you're on the same team, but you have that personality where you're in it for yourself to be your best self. So I'm sure that's got to be tough. But then I guess the easiest thing is you've got to be the biggest alpha of the group.
Yeah, and as you know, out being the biggest alpha in the room or on the group is not always necessarily enforcing the fact that you are that, but being able to get the same result by not utilizing that sort of approach. I think that's, for me, it's worked well. For me, it's been about being a part of the work instead of just commanding for the work to be done. One of the main reasons why I uploaded more videos than anybody else on my team was because I needed them to see that, hey, I may have this figurehead title of whatever you want to call it, but I'm also in the trenches with you doing the same thing, trying to also do my best to bring up this brand with videos and ideas, and that's always up. And I wish I could have done it in a competitive way, playing my favorite game, but my hand-eye coordination just wasn't as good as the top 1%. So,
Hector, is that something where if you're 22 and you're in the top 1% with your hand-eye coordination, that only lasts a certain amount to, like, mid-30s or something, and it degenerates for everybody?
We don't know. We're living through it right now. Back in the day, you used to hear about how people used to retire at 23 because they were too old. They weren't. Skill-wise or ability-wise, they weren't. They just grew to a point in which they had to make a living. They had to get out of the house. So they couldn't spend the 8 hours a day playing Call of Duty. They had to go and get a job and pay for bills.
Right.
So they retired because of that. But now, because of the amount of work that we put in over the last 2 decades, like, now there is an ability to make a living off of this. And that's been the best thing that has happened to this community. Yeah. And not just this one, obviously the entire YouTube community.
Hector, you mentioned one thing. You said you wanted to lead from the front and you wanted to be uploading the most content and just showing them that just because, like you said, you're the CEO and you're this big success story, it doesn't stop. What do you think's the difference between you? Because you've kept that work ethic from day one. It's one of the reasons I really admire you and I love following your story, Hector, is because you could have just, you did so well with this. You could have just stayed in this field, and you're doing all these other entrepreneurial ventures and you're following your passions and you're trying to raise all the players, team, and the people around you because you want to see them succeed. Like, there's a lot more to just you looking out for yourself financially. But I wonder what's the difference between someone that, they build a company and they have their big sets sell out and then they just sell off in the sunset and they don't want to do anything else, versus someone like you or the Elon Musk that you're always looking for the next thing. And I was so interesting because I wonder if I haven't had that kind of success where I wonder how I would be, because I know that happiness is not found sitting around doing nothing with a bunch of zeros in the bank account, So that's why I love looking at people like you, and you're always looking for other things. You're never resting on your success, because I don't think happiness is there. Like, too many people are in their job and they think, if I can just do another 20 years and get to my retirement and get my gold watch, then I'll be happy. And that's just never happened to anybody. You're never happy sitting around.
I mean, type A personalities, right? It's there are people who identify very quickly, hey, I want to sail into the sunset and I gotta get my ass beat for 10 years to build this one thing that I hate doing, but I know that there's going to be an exit at the end of it, and I'm playing for the exit. So there are those people who say that is my goal. And then there's other people like me who is more like, okay, well, OpTic is there's a possibility for OpTic to be as valuable as other, traditional franchises, right? I mean, in the billions of dollars of valuation. And you can look at the valuations of current teams, the amount of money that esports teams are making to justify the $400 million valuations, point towards that. So for me, I sort of find that it's my life's duty to see this thing all the way through, to see what it can become, or to leave it in a position to become what it will become without me being present. And I'm talking, obviously, 50, 60 years from now and what it would look like. But yeah, I think identifying what it is, and, to speak to you, what is it that you like doing, right? Like, I know that you love fitness. I know that you love jujitsu. And if that's what you want to do until you're until whenever, then that's your goal. How do I get to just do that forever? And if that is sell as much real estate as I can, then awesome. But if real estate is also a hobby of yours that you enjoy, everyone's winning.
Yeah. One thing about thinking far ahead, I always think I'm a big believer in setting intentions and having kind of long-term goals to aspire to. But I know that opportunities come up that we never foresee. And it's kind of like, it's, I don't want to say it's pointless, but it's very unlikely that the future we imagine today is going to be the future we're living in 20 years.
Yes.
Right. But are you one of those people that think about where you'll be in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road? Or are you just taking it pretty much day by day and seeing where the opportunities are?
Yeah, I think I'm a day by day guy. One day I was sitting in a cubicle punching 3443 to be able to go to the bathroom, and then come back from the bathroom and punch in 3443 to make sure that, I'm working. And the next thing, I am having fun for a living. I mean, today is one of my busiest days, and I just come off of an incredible weekend of not doing anything besides drinking margaritas and catching big fish. And now I'm in my art studio, in which I have to not only prepare for our major, which is happening in a couple of weeks, but to also be on time to this podcast, finish an art project that I'm doing for one of our sponsors. I have to do a live stream right after this, and most people would be like, "Man, that's a lot," but it is. I would be doing this thing no matter what. If I worked my traditional 9 to 5 in a cubicle, or if I was out there in construction, no matter what, from the time that I got home until the time I was able to stay up, I would have been doing the exact same thing, whether people were watching or whether people were buying. And the proof is in the pudding, because for 2 years, I uploaded videos to YouTube when there was no way to monetize. So, identifying that and knowing, like, my office, I'm a very, very ADHD person when it comes to neatness, cleanliness, and the state of this office right now is giving me a little bit of anxiety. And I'm talking about the non-serious one that stops you or freezes you from doing things. Is just one of those things where, like, I cannot wait to get this day done so that all of this can get cleaned up.
Hey, the one thing that you have a teenage daughter. I have a 4-year-old, so I'm a lot less far along the parenting.
My man Victor.
Yes, but Hector, one thing I've noticed is it wasn't until I became a parent where I kind of slowed down a little bit in my life, and I look back at things, and I feel like when I was younger, whether I achieved what I wanted to or I failed at what I wanted to, I never even stopped to consider. I was always looking, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And I realized that's a great way for accomplishment. But really, if you want a happy life, you do have to sometimes pause and savor. And I know in 2019, you won the Esports Lifetime Award Achievement, which is such a big deal in your industry. Do you take time now and, like, just kind of savor, like, how far I've come? I mean, obviously you have that celebration every year where you celebrate the day you left the corporate world. But do you try to take some time to pause and reflect and enjoy your success? I feel like half of success is you want to enjoy what you've accomplished. But I just see so many successful people, they never look back. They only just look forward.
Yeah. So as I accepted, my acceptance speech for the Halftime Achievement Award was, thank you for the Halftime Achievement Award. They honored me with the Lifetime. And I said, wait a minute, I'm still going, right? So I appreciate the thing, but this is halftime for me. Again, when you slowed yourself down to enjoy time with Victor, you're running with the kid, right? You're exercising with the kid. You're spending so much time with the kid. And what you're doing is you're scratching that itch for your own fitness, while at the same time getting the utmost dopamine of being able to share something with your son that's going to help him forever. I wish my dad would have done a little bit of a better job of making fitness a part of my everyday routine, because it is, obviously it helps with everything, with clarity of mind, with ability to do whatever it is that you want, the longevity of what you're able to accomplish if you take care of yourself, right? So I think that slowing down for people like us, you included, obviously you and I, is not necessarily slowing down, but tapping into something that is natural to you that you get to do with taking the time in helping someone, whether it's your kid or your spouse or whatever, but continuing to do what you would already do anyway. Now we're at a point at which, Jude has a couple of ideas that she wants to launch, and I have all of the experience in the world in this internet world where I can now sort of be her assistant in a way, and sort of help her, sort of accomplish her own things. And that to me is slowing down from the day to day where I would, maybe work on an extra art project that would only, scratch my itch, but that sort of thing is what I perceive as slowing down, right? Not necessarily going as hard as you can, doing all of the things you can, but to slowing down and continuing to scratch your itch, but maybe doing it for somebody else alongside somebody else.
Mm. One thing I find so fascinating about parenting, Hector, is if you never spoke to your daughter about anything, and she would have still learned so much just from watching the way you live your life. How kids, it's not really what we tell them as much as, it's what they see us doing day in and day out. But now she's older. Do you have these kind of philosophical conversations with Liv and kind of talk about life and happiness and success and direction? Do you talk about that stuff with her now she's older?
Just yesterday, we were at lunch, and her, my wife, and I, and we were just talking about life, and I'm explaining to her that I was also 15 years old, and I also knew it all, and it was not the case. There isn't a case, and it's impossible for you to know it all or know as much as we do, because you're 15. We've had I've had 40 years on this world, more than you, 40 years of experience. And I explained to her how wise people learn from other people's mistakes, and smart people or clever people just learn from their own mistakes, right? And giving her as much advice as possible, giving her as much room also, right? Like, you got to give her, in my opinion, in my opinion, I am more of a guide than a person that's telling her what to do constantly. And I make it a point for her to understand that, her mom's job is to care about her feelings. And I do also care about her feelings, but I am going to take my liberties in not caring too much about them when it's about bettering herself or pushing her to do more. And I tell her, if it's anything else in the world that isn't my idea of helping you, then I'm going to care about your feelings. Of course, your ideas matter. Everything matters. But when it comes to what I think you should be doing better, then I'm going to take my liberties in being forward and honest and give it to her straight. And she thanked me for it. And I said, please reciprocate. If I'm doing something that I could be doing better, then please let me know.
I'm so glad you said that, about you're trying to be a guide as opposed to just trying to tell your kids what to do. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. Is I thought when you became a parent and you have your kids are 2, 3, 4, they would just be complete putty and you could just steer them wherever they went. And maybe when they were a teenager, they would have their own opinions. And it blew my mind in reality where the kid, he's just so strong-willed that, 2 or 3 years old, he already has his distinct personality already formed, and his interests are so different from mine. And that's been something where I want to nurture his interests. And of course, I want to give him support and guidance, but I don't want him to be a mini me. I want him to forge his own path, because I don't know what the future is going to hold. And I'm not equipped to tell him how to deal with the future, but I can give him some principles and I can help him find his own.
Love that.
And I think that's so cool. But I never even realized that before. But the fact you said that, the same thing is you're trying to be a guide, but you're not trying to force, your own thoughts on them. I think that's really beautiful.
What do we know about the world that they're experiencing besides our experience in that world? When we experienced our youth without technology and what that did to us, lack of information, what that did to us, our educational system, what it did to us, right? To me, it's one, I don't know what she's experiencing. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying I'm her. You know how some people are too much of a friend and not too much of a parent?
Yes.
I make sure that in the back of my head, I have the thought of I'm a parent first, but that doesn't mean that I cannot be a friend that's not too influential in the way that she's going to experience her life, because I don't know. If I said too much of, concerts are too dangerous, so I wouldn't want you to go, instead of, saying, hey, maybe it's not, and maybe I'm being too overprotective, let her, experience life. She has to have her own set of emotions, her own set of experiences. And for a parent to sort of deny them of the bumps and bruises, it's a disservice more than a service. And I cannot be that sort of parent.
Absolutely love that. Hector, they say that two of the biggest things that determine if we're happy in life is if we like what we do and if we're in a good relationship. And you definitely love what you do, and you've been married a long time. I see a lot of my friends who are single and dating in their 40s. And man, Hector,
cheers to that.
Cheers to that. It's tough dating these days. It's tough. I feel like we had it all easier when we met our wives. So things seemed a bit simpler in the dating scene. But do you have some words of wisdom for a successful marriage over decades? Because you're obviously the epitome of that.
If you identify early on and you are okay with being okay with the fact that you're always going to be getting to know each other for the rest of your lives, personalities change, interests change. The love shouldn't, but it does in some instances. But I've been lucky enough to be with a person who is, I'd like to say, a little bit more strong-willed than I am, to be able to put up with a personality like me. For someone who's always moving, if not to draw a line between me and a shark, but sharks are constantly moving. And it's not because of if people say if they stop moving, they die. It's like they don't die; they feel suffocated. And she, from the beginning, has been very, very, very understanding of the fact that I just have to be doing something at all times, whether it's going to yield a financial or any sort of benefit to anybody else or not. I have to be creating something, and I have to be moving forward, or I feel like I am being suffocated by whatever it is out there that makes me feel this way. But yeah, it's very important to be in a good relationship, because man, every man knows what it's like when things aren't good at home, and when you're sort of in a little bit of a spat, whether over the smallest thing or over the biggest thing, and you're not yourself. And if things aren't right at home, it's like carrying a backpack full of rocks, man. And what I've learned for me and what's worked for me personally, I don't know what's worked for Jude, even though she's my wife. She has her own things that she had to, go through in order for us to make it 23 beautiful years together, is the fact that I have to constantly be evolving as a husband, as she's evolving as a woman, right? Like, this is our first time here, and what we are in our 30s is not what we are in our 40s, and is definitely not going to be what it's like in our 50s. So being okay with each and every single one of these decades being different makes it a lot easier to not run away from things that you otherwise wouldn't.
That's beautifully said. Hector, you just reminded me of a story. When I first met Judy, Jen and I started dating, and she moved in very quickly. And we I thought she was the one, but you never know. And your wife was like, I'm a little skeptical about this mystery guy. Suddenly she's moving in with him. So she actually came to see us, and we took the dogs out, and she was like, okay, I think he's okay. But had that beautiful memory. Like that just shows the kind of character that you both have. Like, number one, you being okay with her staying with you for a long time, while she was, got out of an 11-year relationship and she was trying to land on her feet again. And we're always so grateful to both of you for that. And also her for caring enough to be like, no, I want to meet this guy that you're already moving in with after a couple of weeks, and make sure he's okay. So I just think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, I think we protect our own, and Jen's family, your family. We look out after each other, and this is second nature. So it's no duty. It's really what we're supposed to be doing anyway, looking out for each other. So yeah, I'm glad it worked out, because you're a cool one.
Oh, thank you, brother. I want to ask you one last thing, Hector. Now you seem the type of person that when you didn't really have anything, you were probably pretty happy. And now you're very successful, financially successful as well. You seem like you're still happy. And I always say that for me, money's an amplifier. If you're poor and miserable, and I give you $1 million, you're probably just going to be wealthier and miserable, and if you're happy with nothing, you're going to be happy with, zeros in the bank account. How do you see money? Like what's it meant to you to have a lot of success the last few decades? Does it mean much to you? I'd love to just kind of hear your thoughts on that. For people that don't have it, I think too many people think if I can just make X amount of money, my problems will go away. And I'm always the one saying that's not the case. But I also do think money is important. It's the nice feeling not to worry about your bills, because I've been there, and I'm sure you were there in your youth.
Absolutely. Obviously, mega important, mega big part. This is part of everybody's daily life to make ends meet. And, the amount of people, and I'm talking about the majority of the world who live to work is, unfortunate, right? I think living to work is okay for a while, but if it is troublesome for you, why not take an extra 2 hours a day to figure out what else you could be doing? Because I can tell you that if somebody is unhappy and making 250 a year or 150 a year, being miserable, them driving an Uber because they love driving is going to be a better life, because they wanted to be out there putting rubber to the road. You can make more money being an accountant, but if you're a carpenter at heart because your DNA says so, go with that instead, and try to figure out how to make more than you would have already. And I think that's the beauty of the internet. I know that I keep talking about it, but it is the single thing that has allowed me to completely shift got to the fork in the road. It was called the internet, and I chose the one that was a little bit risky, but it wouldn't have mattered in the end because I would have been doing something that I liked to do. But yeah, money obviously allows you to continue to do the things that you love. So it's important. But for me, like the entrepreneurial side of me sort of was a retuning of my creativity, and that allowed my sensitivities, my thoughts, my ability to go forward, to make it that much easier. I always wanted to make money. I grew up poor. It's always been a must for me. But once I sold OpTic and made the most money I've ever made, I was sad as hell. I hated what was happening, and I then realized that, hey, you might have it all in the bank, but the reality of things is that, and it's again, I don't regret anything that I did. I have my qualms and quarrels with some of the decisions that I made. But in the end, I'm still here. I'm still fighting, and I'm still here filled with purpose, and that gives me happiness. And if I'm happy, I'm able to be a better parent. I'm able to be a better husband, a better dog dad, a better cat dad, a better turtle dad, and be cool with having that many animals in one single household.
Brother, you are very patient, but seriously, Hector, I appreciate you. I know you got to get to your next meeting, but bro, you really epitomize so many things I love in life. The fact that, you took risk, you follow your passion, you're an artist, and you bring that into your daily life, your artistic side, and you're still a great husband, a great father, great friend. You're so loyal. It's
trying to be great, father. Great.
Even that, the little things you said, like, I'll accept this half lifetime award because you're going to do great things, and you're looking to the future. So I really love you, brother. I respect you, I admire you, and I can't wait to see you again over dinner.
Back at you, man. Can't wait to see you guys in person.